It's June, so let's talk some queer horror. Horror has always spoken to the alphabet family. The allegorical nature of a horror movie featuring a gay character has so much potential to tell the story of what it's like being a part of that family. It hits close to home, and the scares become all too real because of it. Back in the day, due to the Hays Code, homosexuality was forbidden on screen. And let's be clear, the Hays Code didn't mention homosexuality, but it did mention sex perversion or any inference of it is forbidden. And of course, even today we fight to define ourselves outside of this myopic viewpoint. In the 1930s though, anything outside of the norm was immediately targeted as perversion, so subtext was the name of the game. For example, in Frankenstein, you can see the relationship between Victor and the monster as a father rejecting his queer child. Or you can watch Creature from the Black Lagoon and see a bunch of dudes swimming around with a phallic-shaped creature, even while that creature elevates the heroine, practically worshipping her as if she's Lady Gaga or Madonna. Mind, you can disagree with these ideas, but you're also probably coming from a point of view that won't see them. It doesn't make them any more wrong. Art is always open to interpretation. Keep in mind, James Whale, director of Frankenstein, and another LGBT classic, Bride of Frankenstein, was openly gay, and when it comes to subtext in his movies, it appears quite intentional. But there are better documentaries about all of this that you should watch. If you have questions, Shudder's Queer for Fear is a must-watch. I begin with this because I want to emphasize how important horror movies are to queer culture. We identify with the outcast, the misunderstood, and the downtrodden, as do many others, to be honest. The coalition of horror fans is diverse, and you'll see these themes in just about any horror movie out there. So with that out of the way, let's get into some of my favorite queer horror movies. I'll have to begin with Clive Barker. Nightbreed or even Hellraiser are classics of queer cinema. In general, regardless of genre. We have such sights to show you. Indeed. Nightbreed is probably the first time I saw upfront and with a little subtext, queer life represented on the big screen. From the monsters forming their own community, and the constant need to protect itself from being attacked from the outside world, to the coming out as a monster story of Aaron Boone. This movie resonates deeply within the queer community. I can't recommend this one enough. Another one that really hit me as a teenager was Cat People from 1942, and to a certain degree the 1982 remake as well. The trigger being sexual awakening and the danger it presents. As a teenager in the 80s, being gay was, well, gay. You can go back to just about any movie from the time, and I'm sure someone is going to get called a faggot at some point. Being gay was one of the worst things that you could be. The political climate during the Cold War and under Reagan was stifling to a young queerling trying to find their way. Movies about knowing one's sexuality, but being afraid of it, resonated. The frustration was real, and to see it so vividly portrayed in film was profound. Dracula's Daughter came out in 1936, and takes dealing with one's sexuality to another level. Once again, subtext is the name of the game, but we're dealing with a main character that's constantly dealing with their impulses, to the point they begin seeing a psychiatrist about it. Being Mormon, I know people that tried as hard as they could to rid themselves of such impulses, going so far as to have electroshock therapy. I myself talked to people about it. Evergreen International was a Latter-day Saint conversion therapy program that attempted to straighten you out. It failed, but it tried. So, to some people, this movie might just be slightly uncomfortable, and to some others, it might represent the real horror and struggle of coming to terms with one's true self in a time when it's considered unacceptable. One thing about older movies, and even movies today, is if the character is an out queer individual, quite often they're portrayed as predators or threats. Off the top of my head, you can look at just about any Disney movie to see this. Jafar, Scar, Captain Hook, Ursula, all portrayed as pretty gay. Let's be honest. And always the villain. The Haunting has one of the first characters I can remember who is an out lesbian and isn't portrayed as a predator or a threat. Theodora is a confident individual that's looking out for others, and the legacy of that character resonates through the remake as well as the Mike Flanagan limited series. I don't know if any list about queer horror can omit Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Many of these scenes, as a closeted queer kid in the 80s, summoned up legitimate fears. Towel fights in the locker room. The locker room in general was a terrifying place back then. Straight guys everywhere talking about straight guy things, and unaware that being naked meant being vulnerable. Robert Russler in a half shirt was a queer awakening for many a kid. Or even the scene where Jesse's trying to make out with his girlfriend before running away in a panic. Attempting to conform and failing so horribly is definitely a fear many queer people had growing up. As you get older and give less of a shit, that fear disappears, and oddly, that analogy can be used for this film in general. At the time, the director kept denying this was a gay film, but as the film aged, that defense began to dematerialize, and now it embraces its queerness. There you go, 5 films off the top of my head that hit that queer nail on the head. It's really hard to limit a list like this to just 5, but I don't have all day, and neither do you. As a couple more examples, The Babadook has been assigned as a gay icon due to Netflix accidentally adding it to the Pride playlist. And Don Mancini, creator and writer of the Child's Play films, has been open about the queer allegorical nature of those movies in the following television show, noting that his experience as a gay man, the abuse and the bullying, influenced his writing and direction of the story. Hopefully this inspires you to go down a rabbit hole and discover just how much queer horror is out there, with some modern classics coming out all the time. I hope you enjoyed this little list. Happy Pride, and take care of yourself.